Hello, ASCTE! How's everyone doing today? Okay, y'all are having a good day then. I want to start off by welcoming our ASCTE board members, our special guests, the students, teachers, and staff who are here today, and anyone who's watching it through the live stream. I'm Gabriella Brooke Phillips, but I go by Gabby. I'm a junior at Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering. I am also the Amateur Radio Club president, and I will be emceeing this event today. Today, Amateur Radio Club is proud to present the Contact with the ARIS program, allowing us to be able to talk to an astronaut who is currently on the International Space Station through amateur radio, along with having the opportunity to ask some questions. I do want to note, while we are making the contact, I want y'all to stay as quiet as possible in order for the astronaut to hear us properly. Speaking of, our astronaut here today that we are communicating with is Jasmin Moghbeli. She is born in Germany, but grew up in New York. She has a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering with informational technology from MIT, a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, and she's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School in California. She is also a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps as a AH-1W Super Cobra pilot and a Marine Corps test pilot. She has over 150 combat missions and 2,000 hours of flight time on 25 different aircraft. She joined the astronaut candidate class in 2017 and launched in August 2023 as the commander of the NASA SpaceX Crew 7 on board the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft to the ISS. To talk more about the ISS, we have Nicole Pelfrey, manager of the ISS Payload and Mission Operations Division at Marshall Space Flight Center. A South Carolina native, Ms. Pelfrey earned a bachelor's degree in biology at Wofford College in 1998. She joined the International Space Station Payload Operations team in 2006 as a payload's communication manager, where she was a team lead for 6 years. She later focused on training organizational management, serving as the operational engineering leading an emerging technology development project. And in her last 2 years, she managed the missions operations and integration contract. In 2018, she joined NASA as an astrophysics branch deputy manager. Later in 2021, she was a deputy manager of the Science Research and Projects Division. She is currently in the Payload Missions Operations Division, where she leads payload operations as they conduct groundbreaking research on the ISS and prepare for science and exploration missions. So please, give a warm welcome for Nicole Pelfrey!
The ISS is the most incredible wonder of the modern world.
Christina Cook, the first one through the hatch.
We're pushing boundaries. We're doing things that nobody else is doing.
The ISS.
So, hello, I'm very excited to be here this morning. As you can see from the video, we have now reached 25 years of ISS. So can you hear me? Okay. So on the left of the image over there, you will see the first two parts of station that launched. So you have Zarya, which is the Russian segment that launched first, and then Unity, the U.S. lab that launched second, just right behind it, and they docked, and that was at the end of 1998. So just a couple months ago, we celebrated our 25th anniversary. You can see over that time how station has grown and expanded. It certainly looks very different than it did when it first docked and we got our first two modules up there. The first part of station's history was largely focused on assembly, right? So you had to fly all those pieces up there. Most of them went up on the shuttle for the U.S. parts. right? And it was all put together, and we now have the large orbiting lab that we have today. It's quite remarkable feat to pull that off, with 5 different space agencies representing 15 different countries. So if you think of the geopolitical environment that we have today, the fact that we could get all of those countries to work together, to get all the interfaces that work. I mean, you know, us in America, we like to use the English, you know, inches and stuff. Everybody else likes metrics, but we still managed to get it all built and put together, and we operate it successfully today. There's a lot of cooperation that goes on between these countries. For station, things are generally divided into the Russian on-orbit segment and the U.S. on-orbit segment. And that U.S. segment includes JAXA's module and ESA's module, the Canadian robotic arm, which was put to great use this morning when it birthed Cygnus. So we have fresh cargo that just arrived this morning. They started unloading it about 7 o'clock-ish this morning. So great cooperation from folks all around the globe. We work with those folks on a daily basis. So how big is the space station? So if you've been to New York, you've been to the Statue of Liberty. It's not much taller than the Statue of Liberty. If you've ever been to the Eiffel Tower, it's roughly 1/3 the height of the Eiffel Tower. Since we're in Alabama, if it's a better correlation, we're the size of a football field, including the end zones. So it's just over 32,000 cubic feet, about the size of a 5-bedroom home. Generally, we have 6 astronauts up there and cosmonauts, 6 folks. Right now, we have the Axiom 3 crew there, so it's actually pretty crowded with 11 folks. So if y'all have a house at the holidays or something that has 11 folks in it, that's pretty full. It's also full of a lot of stuff, right? So we'll get to some other numbers later, but it's expensive and hard to get things launched to space. And so if you are a scientist and you get your stuff up there, you want it to stay so that maybe you do more experiments in the future, right? And you can iterate on those and keep doing more and more science. People don't like to bring things home. So it's very crowded with lots of things we call CTB. They're cargo bags that they keep everything stacked in. And of course, since it's in 0G, microgravity, they've got to keep it bungee corded together so they're not just floating everywhere. So if you see some videos from the inside of the space station, you will often see a whole lot of white bags stuffed everywhere. So it's about 220 miles above the Earth. That varies a little bit, right? Because it'll boost, it'll go up. We just had one of those, right? And then gradually it drifts back down and we boost it up again. So roughly 220 miles. It's going at 17,500 miles an hour. So that's really fast. It goes around the whole Earth in 90 minutes. So in the video that was played there at the beginning, you may have seen Peggy in the cupola, which has all the windows around it, right? It's a prime spot that the astronauts like to go and sit and watch the sunrise and set, take pictures. Got an email yesterday from an astronaut who was retiring after 30 years of supporting the program. And when he was up there, he took thousands and thousands of just awesome pictures because he was a photographer, right? And it's a viewpoint that people just don't have. So it's pretty amazing. There are 8 miles of wire that connects the electrical systems up there. So that's a lot of wire running. And since we are here at the cyber school, there are 3.3 million lines of code for all the ground systems and 1.8 million lines of flight code. So we have folks in Houston, we have folks here at Marshall that are all writing codes that keep the ground systems and the flight systems working. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. I'm pretty sure her mom told her, but I know Rain Rutherford is not here today, right? But impacts that has on kids. One of y'all seniors, her mom was on my team when we used to support in a console position, right? So cute little voice videos that says, "Why are you not here, Mommy, when I got up this morning?" Right? So while all y'all are asleep, we're all still supporting console and keeping things running. So just a little bit about station there, some fun facts. Because we were going up on our 25th anniversary, we pulled some facts together in November. So we did have a little bit added to this in December, but we launched 23,600 pounds of cargo. We brought home 12,900. We did 1,267 hours of crew payload ops. So the AIRS contact that we have here shortly will be some of the hours for 2024 when those get calculated. And then a really impressive feat for us going to Moon and Mars is we reached 98% water reclamation. So there are labs out at Marshall that have taught us how to turn today's coffee into tomorrow's coffee. So all the sweat from them doing their exercises, it gets reclaimed and pulled out of the air. That's really important because if you've ever carried a 5-gallon bucket of water, it's heavy. And if you've got to launch all the water that you need for everything, you're not going to be able to launch anything else. Excuse me. So that was a really big accomplishment for helping us get to the moon and to Mars. So in the 25 years of doing science on ISS, we've done over 3,700 investigations. We have over 250 active research facilities, over 5,000 researchers, and over 4,000 publications. So a little bit about what we do here in Huntsville at Marshall. In the Huntsville Operations Support Center, the HOSC, we support operations around the clock. We have secure and centralized gateway services to support a globally dispersed community. So we are structured to let people from around the world access the space station. We have software we developed. You can put it on your laptop if you have a science experiment and it's flown up there. You can operate it from your garage. You can operate it from your lab. You don't have to travel anywhere. You can command your payload, and that's how we were structured to be able to enable research all over without you having to fly into a control center. We started supporting ops right from the beginning with Expedition 1. Like I said, it was mostly focused on assembly then. We didn't have as much science as we do now that it's fully assembled. But we began around the clock in 2000, right there at Halloween. So at Marshall, we plan, we train, we fly. We're with the payload developer, the scientists from cradle to grave. We can help influence how to do their operations. We train them on how to talk on space to ground. We train flight controllers. We train the crew on the science. We develop the products they need. We develop software tools that help our flight controllers be more efficient. So there's lots of fun things going on out at Marshall. And now that we have moved out of the assembly phase, right, the focus is on the science. It's the test bed for cutting edge research and technology, benefiting future exploration missions, also benefiting folks here on Earth. So I picked out 3 things to talk about. So Frank Rubio, he was part of the mission that came home last year. He spent 371 days in space. That was a record-setting number. He did a lot of cool stuff. He did a lot of EVAs. If y'all seen recently any of the news clips, he's the one that lost the tomato, but they've now found the tomato that he was harvesting while it was up there. But one of the things, he was a prime candidate for them to study, right? He was up there for a full year. Your body changes while you're in space. And over the course of space station, they've looked at a lot of different exercise regimens. So the early equipment, it was rough. Like, I've got to actually be on it. If you wanted to run on the original treadmill, you could not run normally. You had to put one foot in front of the other because it was a very narrow belt. You have to wear weights and harnesses to hold you down to it because otherwise you don't weigh enough and you just float off. You can't run on it. So it's quite impressive when Sonny Williams ran the Boston Marathon on that little bitty treadmill. You know, they've expanded the exercise equipment. They've looked at a lot of resistive stuff, right? Trying to keep the astronauts' bones and muscles from deteriorating as much while they're in space. So Frank had a whole different exercise regime that used less equipment because when we're going to Mars, when we're going further, we don't have, you know, the ability to, over many years, fly up different pieces of equipment and get all kinds of stuff up there, right? So they studied a different exercise regimen with him, and he also had a special diet where they were trying to see if the diet would help slow the deterioration. So that was really important for him. Another cool thing we did last year is we printed a human knee meniscus, right? So any of y'all who know about different surgeries where you need replacements, where you maybe organ transplants and other things, this is something that we're trying to capitalize on the microgravity environment where things form more perfectly because they're not weighted down by gravity. So they 3D printed this meniscus using cells and bioink, and it returned back, and they're doing more studies on it here on Earth. So that could be a really large space economy if they can further develop that. And of course, there are a lot of external platforms on the station, and they study a lot of different climate things. So last July was declared the hottest month on Earth since like 1880. And so there's a lot of different experiments that fly up and study the Earth from there. There's others that don't face the Earth, right, that point out in space and study all kinds of other cosmic events and things that go on. But just a lot of great science going on station. And it's all for bettering life on Earth and for preparing us for the moon and Mars and beyond. And Marshall is excited to continue doing payload operations as we continue to fly station, and also as we move into our Moon to Mars programs and go back to the moon and go on to Mars. So thank you for letting me come out today. I'm excited for y'all's ARIS Pass.
Thank you, Ms. Pelfrey, for that wonderful presentation. Just a reminder to stay quiet while we're making our contact with the ISS for the astronaut to hear us through the radio. Our next speaker is Dr. Brown, one of our engineering teachers at ASCTE and a sponsor of the Ham Radio Club. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Brown.
Good morning, Sentinels. Thank you all for being here. I guess you didn't really have a choice, did you? But thank you anyway for being here. We have about 11 minutes until the space station breaks the horizon here for Huntsville. And about a minute before that, you're going to hear Gabby start to call on the radio to try and reach the space station. So nobody panic. She's going to start a little bit before they come in view. So it's probably 3 or 4 calls before they will actually answer. So don't panic when they don't answer the first time. It'll be okay. About the 6th time, I'll start panicking. When I panic, you'll know it's time to panic. So, but first, I have a video from ARIS that I want to show you. It's kind of the astronaut's point of view on the ARIS program. So, we'll, stand by 1 second while I do that. Well, give me 1 more second while I try and make this work correctly.
1082FJ from 1081SF for scheduled contact.
Hi everyone, I'm Tim Peake and welcome aboard the International Space Station, where we're orbiting Earth 16 times every day. One of the most rewarding activities that some astronauts undertake on orbit is to talk to schools using the space station's ham radio. Now these are events that are planned by ARIS, which is a worldwide group of amateur radio volunteers who are dedicated to introducing young people and students to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now this is the equipment here in the Columbus Laboratory, which consists of a handheld radio, a headset, and we also have a ham video unit. Now as the International Space Station orbits above your location, a radio link is established between the ISS and your school. Now, because we're traveling at nearly 18,000 miles per hour, which is an incredible 25 times the speed of sound, we usually get about 9 or 10 minutes of good radio contact before losing the signal. So about 5 minutes before the scheduled start time of the contact, I come into the Columbus Laboratory and configure the radio so that I'm on the correct channel. And sometimes I'll set up the ham video too. Just before the predicted time, I'll begin to start calling the school using the standard amateur radio calling techniques. For example, if the call sign of your school was GB4 Fun, I would say Golf Bravo 4, Foxtrot Uniform November. This is Golf Bravo 1 Sierra Sierra. listening and standing by. Now at your school, the radio operator will be listening for my call, but may also transmit and try to call me as well. You'll probably have a much more powerful transmitter on the ground than we have up here on board, so I'm likely to hear you before you hear me. Then, once we can hear each other, then comes the best bit, which is actually talking to the students and answering the questions. Once I've answered all the questions, we use the remaining time to say goodbye to each other and end the connection. I'll then spend a few minutes configuring the radio back into a rebroadcast mode, and then I'll go back to my day job, which is of course doing science on board the International Space Station. ARIS is a brilliant opportunity for astronauts to talk to school pupils. It's really rewarding to hear how excited the students are when they're talking to somebody up here in space. And it's a true privilege to be able to inspire our next generation of scientists and engineers through amateur radio.
I'll leave it on there. That's the live view from the station right now as they are rapidly approaching us. So I think you heard earlier that the station moves at about 17,500 miles per hour. So they see 16 sunsets and sunrises a day. And their pass over us will take all of about 12 minutes horizon to horizon. And we'll probably have 10 to 11 minutes of good contact time with them. So that'll be coming up pretty soon here. Our setup, you can see part of it up here in front of me, but it starts on the roof. So some of you, the observant among you, may have noticed about up there above that projector on the roof would be a couple of very large antennas. Those are called Yagi-Uda antennas. So you saw those, they're really long, they have a whole bunch of little elements coming out of them, and that gives us what we call high gain. It gives us a lot of gain in a specific direction. So they're also mounted on a tower with a rotor for azimuth and elevation. So the computer over here is helping us use those antennas. They will track the station, and they will point this very powerful beam at the station from horizon to horizon. I think, let me look. Yeah, we're going to have kind of a northerly pass today. So it's going to come out of the southwest and pass us to the northeast. So it's going to go kind of like that. And if you were outside looking up at the antennas, you would see them track it the entire way pointed at the station. That's going to give us a very good signal, very good connection to the space station. So we ought to get a good 10 minutes out of that. So over on the table here, where some of our local celebrities are seated, like Gabby, we have a couple of things. So first, we've got a rotor control box. That's what's actually driving those antennas on the roof. So it's turning them, it's elevating them, and that's what is giving the signals. They're going to physically move those antennas around and do that tracking. Now, we have a radio here. I have an identical to this, as it turns out, radio down in my classroom. And the backup plan that we absolutely will not have to use is going to be the one that's down in my classroom that's already set up too. But that's not going to happen. This is all going to work perfectly. So this radio is, of course, transmitting through those antennas on the roof, and that's what we're going to hear from. And Mr. Yancey has expertly set all this up to work through the AV system right here in this room. And then we've got the laptop. The view you see on the screen is the laptop that's actually controlling all of these things using the computer. So it's controlling the rotor controls, driving those antennas. It's actually controlling the radio. So when the time comes and our students get ready to ask questions, all they're going to have to do is walk up and speak into the microphone, and it's all going to work practically like magic. Speaking of our students, we have 20 students. Well, we have 19 students and one residential life assistant who are going to ask questions here shortly. So guys, if you want to go ahead and stand up and line up in your number order down the hallway, this would be a great time to do that. And there we go. And we did have one person sick, so standing in for Mr. Fisk is his twin brother, Mr. Fisk. So we were not everybody has a twin who can just step in for them. So we were glad that we had one in this case. It worked out for us. So before long, Gabby will start making those calls. We got about 2.5 minutes until she does that. So during this awkward period of time between me talking about the radios and Gabby doing that introduction, I did want to say a few words of thanks So this is like that acknowledgement section, so I'm going to make you all listen to it. First, Mr. Tim Cunningham from AMSAT, the Amateur Satellite Corporation, is the one who owns all of this equipment and is like the driving force and the technical genius behind this whole thing. And he's the guy who really got all this stuff set up technically, and absolutely couldn't have done it without him and AMSAT, and we really appreciate them. Also really appreciate the Huntsville Amateur Radio Club. So we've got a couple of members over here in the corner. Mr. John Morgan's at the table, Mr. Richard Christensen's at the table, Mr. Bob Erisman is over there with a video going, I think, doing some documentation. So these guys and a few others, Brandy Wheeler and a few others, also helped us move all of that equipment on the roof. It was not easy getting all that stuff onto the roof, just going to tell you that, and running these cables all the way down here. So really appreciate them, and especially Huntsville Amateur Radio Club and Mr. Morgan. He has been just instrumental in us having a club at all and having all the equipment we've gotten and getting set up for even for doing this event and getting some grants from ARRL. So Mr. Morgan is absolutely the man, and he's been a great help here from the community. And I also have to give a shout out to Mr. Yancey, of course, for getting all the AV set up. And I think, is that Mr. Long up top with the chief? Yeah, Mr. Long is also the man. He helped us get all of the stuff actually on the roof and all these cables run. So gotta give the shout outs to all of them. So we are just about time, about another 30 seconds or so. Gabby will start making that call. So I will give the plug. Amateur Radio Club, Thursday morning, 7:30 in my classroom. You should be there. Come on out. Come on out. We don't talk to the space station every day, but once in a while we do that. All right. I'm going to take a quick look so you guys can see the kind of the light circle on the screen there. That is the field of view from the space station, right? So that is what they can see. And the frequencies that we're using to contact them are effectively line of sight, so they don't go over the horizon very far. So pretty much when their field of view, when that circle gets over Huntsville, which is the white kind of plus sign on the map up there, when it gets over that, we're in view, we will be able to contact them. Like I said, Gabby will start making that call a little bit before they actually hit that field of view point, but that's when we're able to see them. That's what they see, and Lieutenant Colonel Moghbeli will be looking down on us, and we'll ask her if she can see our building. No, I'm kidding. We won't ask her if she can see our building, but we'll get pretty close there. So we are at 11:33 Central Standard, and station is about 3 degrees below the horizon. So Gabby's going to go ahead and start making the call now, and again, it'll probably be a few times before we actually pick them up.
Calling November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra. This is November 4, Charlie Tango Echo. Calling for the scheduled school contact. Over. Calling November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra. This is November 4, Charlie Tango Echo. Calling for the scheduled school contact. Over.
November 4, Charlie Tango Echo. This is November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra. Have you loud and clear? How me? Over.
November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra. You are 5'9" at Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering. This is Gabby, the Amateur Radio Club President. Are you ready for student questions?
I'm ready for student questions. Over.
This is Keegan. What do you and the others do up there for fun? Over.
Keegan, probably one of our favorite things to do up here is head to the cupola, our window to the Earth, and take photos of our beautiful planet and the solar system. And also, we like hanging out together as a crew and sometimes gathering for a meal. Over.
This is Emery. Are you worried about cyber vulnerabilities on the space station? And if you are, what plans are in place to counteract them? Over.
Emery, I actually don't think I've ever been asked that before, but yes, absolutely, we're concerned about cyber vulnerabilities. Thankfully, there's an entire team on the ground that works to protect us from those, through software upgrades and various things. So I don't need to think about it on a daily basis, luckily. Over.
This is Felix. How is the station protected from microdebris? Over.
Felix, we have what's called MLI, multi-layer insulation on the outside of the station, kind of a cloth almost that is there for both thermal insulation and also to protect from debris. We also have shielding on various parts of station, covering important lines and things like that. And also we have a team on the ground that is can track micro debris of different sizes, and if needed, we will potentially boost our orbit or lower our orbit to avoid it. Over.
This is Owen. How, if at all, has 3D printing been used lately on the station? Over.
Owen, that's a great question. I'm actually standing right next to our biofabrication facility, which is used to print human tissues. It's a test demonstration right now, a tech demonstration right now, and actually just a little over a month ago, we were trying to print miniature heart tissues up here with it. We also have a few other 3D printers, using metals and plastics and things like that throughout the station. Over.
This is Isabel. What sparked your interest in becoming an astronaut, and how old were you when you figured it out? Over.
Isabel, I was quite young. I was in elementary school when I did a book report on Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space, and that's when I first remember saying I wanted to become an astronaut. And since then, that dream has just grown, and I'm very lucky to be here today. Over.
This is Kason. Did you go to college and pick a major with the intention of becoming an astronaut? Over.
Jason, I wouldn't say necessarily pick the major just to get me here someday. I studied aerospace engineering because it was something I was definitely interested in, but I definitely didn't want to close the door to becoming an astronaut, so it worked out that engineering, which I loved, also helps out as an astronaut. Over.
This is Henry. Have you ever broken anything on the ISS? Over.
Henry, I'm sure I have. I'm trying to think. Actually, recently, probably the thing I broke that I felt pretty bad about was we were growing tomato plants, and we send them back down to the ground to take a look at them, and I broke a leaf off one of the tomato plants we were harvesting, so I felt pretty bad about that. Over.
This is Carter. How is the ISS actually maneuvered? Over.
Carter, so on a regular basis, when we're just kind of maintaining our attitude, we have gyros to do that, so we're not using up propellant. And then when we actually need to maneuver, to boost our orbit or things like that, we use the various thrusters on station, oftentimes on the Russian segment, as I said, those will usually we use it to boost our orbit, but every now and then we might lower it for a certain reason. Over.
This is Aiden. What is your scariest experience as an astronaut? Over.
Aiden, I think probably the spacewalk. I did my first spacewalk recently with my good friend Laurel O'Hara, and out there on the outside of the station with just the two of us, I felt very exposed, and that was probably my scariest experience so far. Over.
This is Elliot. Do you face any unique physiological changes after spending a lot of time in space? Over.
Elliot, yes. Actually, we're studying a lot of those changes. Definitely, without in this weightless environment, we experience fluid shifts. So, our blood and water volume changes, and then when you come back down to Earth, you experience effects from that. We've seen changes in in people's eyes and their vision in space. Usually that returns back to normal when we get back to the ground, but sometimes it doesn't, so we're definitely interested in studying that. And then if you don't work out regularly, you can experience muscle and bone density loss. So definitely a lot of things to consider, especially in the weightless environment. Over.
This is Lilith. What software tools like Excel and MATLAB do you use? Over.
Lilith, I definitely use Excel all the time. Up here, I don't use MATLAB regularly, but on the ground, sometimes when I was working, on the design of the next lunar lander, I would sometimes use it. But up here, up here and on the ground used a lot of Excel. Over.
This is Jayla. What mental health support do you have on the station? Over.
November 4 Charlie Tango Echo. This is November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra. Do you still have me? Over.
Tango Echo, we had a momentary dropout, but we have you now.
Okay, copy. I have you the same. Over.
This is Jayla. What mental health support do you have on the station? Over.
Jayla, I actually, each one of us has a team of 2 psychologists assigned to us, and we meet with them regularly. Every 2 weeks, we meet with them, and then any additional time we meet with them, we can always schedule. And also, they make sure we have time to talk with our families at least once a week and video chat with them. That keeps most people happy and feeling connected back down to earth. Over.
This is Nathan. If you were to start over, would you still choose to be an astronaut? And if not, what would you choose instead? Over.
Nathan, 100%. I would still choose to be an astronaut. I feel extremely lucky and grateful to be up here. I've dreamed about this my entire life, and it is somehow even better than I expected. It is so cool first to be able to float around, something I've dreamed of since I was a kid, and look back on Earth. I can't tell you how beautiful it is, and I just love exploration and pushing the boundaries. Over.
This is Abel. What kind of exercise do you do in space to stay fit? Over.
Abel, we exercise every single day for about 2 to 2.5 hours. We do a combination of lifting. There's a device that uses vacuum tubes to create that resistance for us. And then we also do cardio on a treadmill where we wear a harness that pulls us down, or on a bicycle. It's called CBIS. Over.
This is Braden. What experiments or research projects are y'all currently working on in the unique microgravity environment of the space station?
Braden, we've got, I think, about 200 experiments going right now. I mentioned earlier we just recently harvested plants that we grew. We've been doing different technology demonstrations. We're doing a lot of testing with combustion in space. And so we have all different types of experiments going, to include on the outside of space station experiments mounted looking back at Earth or measuring various things in our atmosphere. Over.
This is Landon. Is solar power the only form of energy on the space station? Over.
Yes, Landon, solar power. So we have these huge solar arrays on the outside of the station, and then we convert that energy into electricity. So that is how the entire space station is powered. Over.
This is Madison. What should I do if I want to become an astronaut? Over.
Madison, I suggest you do whatever you're passionate about. We have different people in the office, in the astronaut office, come from all different backgrounds. We have doctors, we have engineers, we have scientists. I myself am a military pilot. So do whatever it is you love to do and you're passionate about, and I think that means you'll excel at it, and then hopefully someday you can become an astronaut. Over.
This is Emily. If there's an emergency on the station, what do you do first? Over.
Emily, for most emergencies, the first thing we do is make sure everyone knows there's an emergency. There are spots on station where you can't necessarily hear the tone of the alarm. There are areas where they're a little more isolated. So the first thing we usually do is make sure everyone knows. For some emergencies, the first thing we do is put on a mask. It's kind of like on a plane where you put on your mask before you help others. So we put on a mask first, make sure we're good, and then our next step would be to make sure everyone else is taken care of. Over.
This is Brooke. How do you manage daily activities like eating, sleeping, and exercising in the confined space of the space station, and how does it differ from life on Earth? Over.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is that we're all up here together for 6 months. You can't go outside. You can't go to the other people if you want to.
Thank you so much. Signing out.
This is November 4 Charlie Tango Echo. Over and out. Thank you. All right, Sentinels, once again, we're very grateful to AMSAT and to the Huntsville Amateur Radio Club, and most of all to Ms. Perfrey coming from NASA, Ms. Pelfrey, and Lieutenant Colonel Moghbeli for taking her time on the station. So at this time, we're going to release all of you RF engineering electives stay here. All the other students and faculty go to your 4th period elective. This concludes our program.
Did she send down her answers to the questions? No. Is there any way to find out what the answer to the 20th question was?
I can ask.
Okay, if you could, like, or even.